Well, after nearly 20 years, we're getting a new Tenkaichi game. Color me surprised. I didn't think they'd ever return to this franchise, especially considering around that time that Dragon Ball games were declining in sales. So, this being revealed at the Battle Hour a few days ago really caught me by surprise. And I know a lot of people were excited for it. I can't blame them. I mean, it's the Tenkaichi series. At the time, Tenkaichi 3 especially, it was known as being the DBZ battle simulator. You know, it would in many ways perfectly replicate the show. The quick and fast combat in Tenkaichi 3 has always been a delight to play. And it was an enjoyable time all around. But then, we moved on to the Rage and Blast series, and that's when Spike's games started to really fall apart. Content was taken away from us, the combat went back to being slow and clunky, especially with the first game. Had, many camera issues and whatnot. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, this won't be the case with this one. I'm more or less cautiously optimistic with this one. I'm not fully excited for it. And I know that may be surprising to hear, but the problem is, this isn't the same Spike Chunsoft that developed the Tenkaichi trilogy. I doubt those developers that worked on those games still work there. Their record for the past few years with arena fighters hasn't been that great. We got One Punch Man, which had about a year of online support before most of that was shut down. Jump Force lasted about 2 years before most of its online components were shut down. And honestly, both those games were kind of disasters. The combat was terrible, it had horrible hit detection. Spike refused to balance the game, saying it wasn't competitive despite the fact that it had an online component, so at the end of the day you still had to balance the game, and they just refused to do so. So, I honestly don't know. And I know people expected to have a roster as big as Tenkaichi 3, but here's the thing. Tenkaichi 3 only got that big roster because it was building off of 2 prior games and it had pre-existing skeleton to use. And then from there they could just reuse assets and, create new characters. But the thing is, most of those characters played roughly the same. And think about it. How many Goku, Gohan, and Vegetas did we have in the game? Quite a bit. So to expect a roster out of the gate as big as Tenkaichi 3's would be wishful thinking? Because here's the thing. This isn't a continuation. This is a game that's going to be built from the ground up. Now whether it's a Tenkaichi 4 or a brand new Tenkaichi altogether, who knows? But this is a game that's being completely built from the ground up. So expect a feasible roster, but don't expect a big roster. You will probably get that through DLC. They're going to have to build each of these characters from scratch. So, could they use the other game as references? They can, of course. But this is a game that's going to be built on modern hardware, and games these days take longer to build. So, maybe we won't be getting a trilogy. We maybe just be getting one game, and then they'll expand it out with DLC. And eventually we'll get that big roster that, people want. But to expect it right out of the gate? Nah, that's just wishful thinking. And in all honesty, we don't know whether or not Spike Chunsoft is going to be developing this game. We don't know. All we know is that it's a continuation of the Budokai Tenkaichi franchise. That's all we know. We don't know who the developer is yet. We just recently got the teaser, which is shown from this picture that was shown at Battle Hour, and yeah, it looks nice. It is a clear homage to Goku Super Saiyan transformation on Namek. It's a clear homage to that, and visually, the character model looks fantastic. It looks great. But what would I be hoping from this? Well, for one, a good combat system, because as I mentioned, Spike Chunsoft's combat systems in the past few years have not been good. They pretty much built off of what they developed in J-Stars, and it just got worse from there. I'm expecting the game to visually at least look good. Hopefully the netcode is good for the online, because Dragon Ball games are notorious for having bad netcode, and the only time the Tenkaichi series on older hardware had an online component, that was the Wii version of Tenkaichi 2 and 3, and I never heard great things about that, so we'll just have to wait and see. But let's not forget, this isn't the first time they've attempted to bring back the Tenkaichi series in a way. Lest we remember Ultimate Tenkaichi, which is funny how they listed that. They probably just did it for brand recognition, because that game is technically part of Raging Blast and not the Tenkaichi series, and they tried to build off that. And the game didn't sell well. It didn't help that Spike only had about a 6-month development cycle, to my knowledge, with that. And that was just not a good game in general. It was a dull, boring mess of a game. But I mean, we'll see. Hopefully the story mode is actually good. Once again, they're not well known to make good story modes. Their cutscenes have always been, for lack of the better words, stiff and janky and rather lifeless, because the character models never emoted. Once again, Jump Force, for example. The cutscenes in that game were horrendously dull and bad. Horrendous. Just absolutely horrendous. I mean, Burning Blood's cutscenes were actually pretty good for what they were. They weren't bad. They actually had movement. They actually emoted. It weren't bad. But I'm hoping for a rather decent roster at a start. Nothing outlandish or over the top, because that would just make longer development time for the game. And until we see actual gameplay from this game, considering it's in very early development, if you're excited for this game, I'm happy for you, but be around the cautious end. This is still Bandai we're talking about. Anything can happen. It can be good, it can be bad. But once again, I would rather like to have a feasible roster, a good story mode with actual good cutscenes, a good solid soundtrack. Hopefully the English dub is pretty decent. Spruce up on the online. Make sure it at least has a decent netcode. And maybe a few other things I could think of later on down the road. Maybe with its if they bring back 5v5, I heard someone mention that this would be a good idea, and I kind of agree with this. Where you're in an online lobby, it could potentially be a 10v10, and you could have a person control each character, kind of like how they do in Fighters. Maybe they could do it like in Tenkaichi Tag Team, where there'd be like 2 players per team on the battlefield, and you could just, go at it like that. It might get a bit chaotic. I mean, if it can work in a PSP game, then it can work in a PS5 Series X game. So, until we hear more news, we'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm cautiously optimistic. We don't know who's developing this yet. If it's Spike Chunsoft, I would be on the cautious side, because once again, their track record has not been great these past few years. Take away the Tenkaichi title. Once again, their track record has not been great. So, until then, take care, and I'll see you guys around. Bye!